I never imagined a day would come when my own daughter would look at me and decide I didn't belong in one of the most important moments of her life. When she was born, I held her so close that I could feel her heartbeat against my chest. I remember whispering promises into her tiny ear, promises she would never hear, but ones I meant with my whole soul. I promised I would protect her. I promised I would always show up. I promised I would never leave her alone in the moments that mattered most. For years, I kept those promises without even thinking about them. I was there for scraped knees and sleepless nights. I was there when she cried over broken toys, broken friendships, and broken dreams. I was there when she learned how to ride a bike, when she slammed her bedroom door for the first time, and when she came back hours later pretending nothing had happened. So when she called me one quiet afternoon and told me I wasn't welcome at her wedding, I didn't know how to breathe. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't sound angry. Her words were calm, almost rehearsed, as if she had practiced them so they wouldn't hurt as much. But they did. They hurt in a way I didn't know was possible. She said it was her day. She said it would be better this way. She said we would understand. I told her I did. But after the call ended, I sat alone at the kitchen table and stared at the wall for a very long time. I thought about the dress I would never see. The vows I would never hear. The moment I had imagined since she was a little girl, watching her walk toward a new life, slipping quietly out of my hands. I never imagined I'd be writing this. For 28 years, Emily was the center of my world, the quiet joy that made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. Now, 6 months after she told us we weren't welcome at her wedding, I still catch myself staring at the invitation that never came, wondering how love so deep could turn into silence. Looking back, it feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Emily arrived on a rainy October afternoon in 1997, 2 weeks early and screaming like she already had opinions about the world. The nurse placed her in my arms, this tiny, red-faced bundle with a shock of dark hair, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what unconditional love feels like. My husband Mark squeezed my hand so hard I thought he'd break it, both of us crying quietly while the monitors beeped around us. We weren't wealthy. Mark worked long hours as a mechanic, and I picked up night shifts at the hospital once Emily was old enough for daycare. Money was always tight, groceries stretched with casseroles, birthdays celebrated with homemade cakes and one carefully chosen gift. But we gave her what we could, time, attention, and a home filled with laughter even when the bills piled up. I have these small memories that live in my heart like pressed flowers. The way she'd toddle into our bedroom at dawn on weekends, climbing between us with her stuffed rabbit clutched under one arm. "Mommy, the sun's awake," she'd whisper, as if it were our secret. I'd pretend to grumble while pulling her close, breathing in that sweet baby shampoo smell. There were the ordinary afternoons that felt magical in their simplicity. Pushing her on the swing at the park, higher and higher until she shrieked with delight. Teaching her to ride a bike in the driveway, running alongside her, one hand on the seat, promising I wouldn't let go, and then quietly doing exactly that when she finally found her balance. She turned around with the biggest grin, pedaling in wobbly circles, shouting, "Look, Mommy. I'm doing it." Even the messy moments were precious. The summer she discovered mud puddles and came home looking like she'd been dipped in chocolate. Or the winter she caught her first cold and wanted nothing but to curl up on my lap while I read Goodnight Moon for the 100th time. I'd rock her slowly, feeling her warm weight against my chest, thinking there was no place on earth I'd rather be. Emily was a sensitive child, quietly observant, quick to notice when someone was hurting. She'd bring home injured birds or cry at sad commercials. We encouraged that gentleness. When she wanted dance lessons at 8, we scraped together the money by skipping our own small luxuries. Watching her twirl across the living room in her little pink leotard, eyes shining with pure joy, It made every skipped coffee or secondhand coat worth it. Parenting wasn't perfect. There were nights I fell asleep at the kitchen table waiting for Mark to get home from overtime shifts. Times we argued about money in hushed voices after Emily was asleep. Moments I lost patience and raised my voice when I shouldn't have. But we always came back to her with apologies and hugs, showing her that love means repairing what's broken. As she grew, our bond felt unbreakable. She'd crawl into my bed during high school storms, even at 16, claiming she just needed to talk. We'd lie there in the dark discussing everything: friend drama, college fears, her dreams of becoming a graphic designer. I'd stroke her hair like I did when she was small, marveling at how this incredible young woman had grown from that tiny baby I once held. I poured everything into being her mother. The school volunteer hours, the endless driving to activities, the late nights helping with projects. Saving for her college fund in a jar labeled Emily's Future. Celebrating every milestone like it was my own, the first heartbreak I helped mend with ice cream and long talks, the acceptance letter that had us both jumping around the kitchen. Love, I've learned, isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's the quiet accumulation of 1,000 small choices, choosing to listen instead of lecture, to stay instead of walk away, to give when you have little left. That's what I gave Emily, every day, every year, without keeping score. I never imagined she'd one day decide that love wasn't enough. That the mother who once meant everything would be asked to stay away from the most important day of her life. But that's a story for another part. For now, I hold on to these memories, the weight of her small hand in mine, the sound of her laughter echoing through our little house, the way she used to look at me like I hung the moon. Some things, I suppose, are harder to outgrow than others. Emily turned 13 the way a flower opens, slowly at first, then all at once. One day she was still my little girl who begged for one more bedtime story, and the next she was locking her bedroom door, earbuds in, rolling her eyes at the sound of my voice. I told myself it was normal. Every parent I knew said the same thing: teenagers pull away. It's how they learn to stand on their own. So I gave her space, even when it hurt. High school brought the first real cracks. She traded dance classes for art club, which I loved at first, my creative girl, sketching in the margins of her notebooks, coming home with charcoal smudges on her fingers. We still had our moments, late night talks over hot chocolate when she couldn't sleep, or the two of us laughing until we cried over silly videos on her phone. But something was shifting. She started spending more weekends at her friend Sarah's house, coming home quieter, distracted. When I asked how her day was, I'd get a shrugged, fine, instead of the flood of details I used to receive. Then came college. We were so proud when she got into the state university 2 hours away, good art program, scholarships that covered most of it. We helped her pack her little car with dorm essentials bought from thrift stores and discount bins. The day we dropped her off, she hugged us tightly, eyes shining with excitement and nerves. "I love you guys," she said, and I believed her. I clung to that hug for weeks. Freshman year, the calls were frequent. She'd tell us about her roommate, her design classes, the cute coffee shop near campus. Mark and I would drive up for Parents' Weekend, taking her and her friends out for pizza, beaming as she showed us her portfolio. But by sophomore year, the calls slowed. Texts became shorter. When she came home for breaks, she spent most of her time in her room or out with high school friends she'd reconnected with. I noticed new things: a small tattoo on her wrist she hadn't mentioned, clothes that looked expensive, opinions that felt sharper than before. That's when Liam entered the picture. She brought him home for the first time during spring break of her junior year. He was tall, well-spoken, studying finance. His family, he mentioned casually, had a house in the Hamptons. I remember serving lasagna and watching Emily light up in a way I hadn't seen in months, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm, finishing his sentences. He was polite enough, shaking Mark's hand firmly, complimenting my cooking. But there was something in the way he looked around our modest living room, the slight pause before he sat on our 20-year-old couch. I told myself I was being sensitive. After that, Liam was in every story. They'd met at a party, bonded over shared tastes in music and film. He encouraged her to think bigger, she said, to apply for internships in the city, to network, to see the world beyond our small town. Emily started talking about things we'd never discussed, private galleries, exclusive events, old money versus new money, as if she'd been studying the difference. She corrected my pronunciation once when I mispronounced a designer's name. It was gentle, almost apologetic, but it stung. I noticed the subtle changes piling up. The way she'd wince when Mark's work boots left grease prints on the kitchen floor. How she stopped eating my casseroles, saying she was trying to be healthier, but ordering sushi delivery with Liam when they visited. The Christmas she asked if we could skip our tradition of opening one gift on Christmas Eve because it felt childish. I smiled and said of course, while my heart quietly folded in on itself. Her friends changed too. The girls she'd known since kindergarten faded into the background, replaced by new names, people from Liam's circle, classmates with trust funds or parents in high places. When she talked about them, her voice took on a different tone, impressed, almost reverent. Jules's dad owns half the vineyards in Napa, she'd say, or Mia's studying abroad in Paris next semester, her family has an apartment there. I'd nod along, asking questions, trying to stay connected to this new world she was entering. Mark noticed it too, though we didn't talk about it much at first. He'd come in from the garage, wash the grease from his hands, and ask quietly, "Did Em call today?" When the answer was no, he'd just nod and change the subject. We didn't want to criticize. She was growing up, finding herself. Who were we to hold her back? But the distance grew. Senior year, she interned in the city and decided to stay there over summer break, subletting with friends. She came home only once, for a long weekend, and spent most of it on her phone coordinating something with Liam. When I asked about graduation, she said they were doing a small family dinner after the ceremony, just us and Liam's parents. "It'll be more intimate," she explained. I swallowed my disappointment and said that sounded lovely. After graduation, she landed a junior designer position at a boutique firm, good pay, great location. We helped her move into a tiny apartment in the city, hauling boxes up 4 flights of stairs while Liam coordinated with the movers he'd hired for the furniture his parents were gifting them. That was the first time I met his mother, Vanessa. She arrived in a tailored coat, air-kissing Emily's cheeks, complimenting the cozy space in a way that made it clear she found it charmingly quaint. Over lunch, she talked about their upcoming trip to Aspen and asked if we skied. I laughed and said we'd always meant to try. Emily started visiting less and less. When she did, conversations felt careful, like we were all walking on eggshells. She'd correct us gently on things we said, politics, social issues, even our word choices. "Mom, we don't say gypsy anymore," she'd explain patiently. Or, "Dad, that joke is kind of problematic." We'd nod, apologize, try to keep up. I started researching terms on my phone before she came over, terrified of saying the wrong thing. I saw the way she looked at our house now, our peeling paint, the outdated kitchen, the stack of bills I quickly hid when she walked in. It wasn't disdain, exactly. More like embarrassment. Like she was seeing us through Liam's eyes, or his family's. Once, when I pulled out my old photo albums to show Liam baby pictures, Emily quickly changed the subject. "Mom, he doesn't need to see me with braces." The emotional distance became a quiet ache. Phone calls were brief, texts transactional. When I sent care packages, homemade cookies, a scarf I'd knitted, she'd thank me politely but never mentioned them again. I stopped asking about her life in too much detail, afraid of the hesitation before she answered. Mark and I would sit at the kitchen table after she left, staring at each other across the silence. "She's just busy," I'd say. "She's finding her way," Mark would reply. We didn't fight it. We didn't demand more time or attention. We told ourselves this was what good parents do: let go gracefully, support from afar. If Emily was happy, that was enough. If she was building the life she wanted, who were we to question it? But late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit in her old room, still painted the soft lavender she'd chosen at 14, and wonder when exactly my daughter had started to feel like a visitor in our lives. When the girl who once ran to me with every hurt had learned to handle them somewhere else. I never confronted her. Never asked the hard questions burning in my chest. Do you still love us the way we love you? Are you ashamed of where you come from? Have we become an inconvenience in your perfect new world? I just watched her change, from a distance that grew wider with each passing month, and told myself it was part of growing up. Little did I know how far that distance would eventually tee. It was a Thursday evening in early March when my phone finally rang with Emily's name on the screen. I was in the kitchen, stirring soup for dinner, and I remember wiping my hands on the dish towel before answering, heart lifting the way it always did when she called. "Mom," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice before she even told me. Liam proposed. For a moment I couldn't speak. Joy rushed through me so quickly it felt like sunlight pouring into every corner of my body. I sank into a chair at the table, pressing the phone tighter to my ear. "Oh, honey. Oh, Emily. Tell me everything." She did. They'd been on a weekend trip to a vineyard upstate, someplace beautiful with rolling hills and a little inn. He'd gotten down on one knee at sunset, right there among the vines. The ring was a family heirloom from his grandmother, a diamond surrounded by tiny sapphires. She sent a photo, her hand against his chest, the ring sparkling, both of them glowing with that new engagement radiance. She looked so happy. My girl looked so happy. Mark came in from the garage just as I was wiping tears from my eyes. I held the phone out so he could hear her excited chatter, and he broke into the biggest grin I'd seen on him in years. When she asked to speak to him, he took the phone with grease still under his fingernails and told her how proud he was, how Liam was a lucky man, how he couldn't wait to walk her down the aisle. We both laughed and cried in turns, the three of us connected across the line like we used to be. That night we opened the good bottle of wine we'd been saving for something special. We toasted to Emily and Liam, to love, to the future. Mark talked about polishing his old suit, maybe even buying a new tie. I let myself dream out loud, helping Emily pick a dress, hosting an engagement party here at the house with fairy lights in the backyard, maybe even a small bridal shower with her old friends. I pictured myself zipping her into a gown, fixing her veil, standing beside her as she said her vows. After years of distance, this felt like a door swinging open again. A wedding, our daughter's wedding, would bring us all back together. For the next few weeks, hope felt almost tangible. Emily called more often, her voice lighter than it had been in ages. She sent links to venues, a rustic barn, a garden overlooking the Hudson, an elegant ballroom in the city. "What do you think, Mom?" she'd ask, and I'd study each photo carefully, offering gentle opinions. I told her I loved anything that made her happy, but secretly I hoped for something simple, something that felt like us. She mentioned a date the following spring, May or June, when the weather would be perfect. I started a secret notebook. On the first page I wrote Emily's wedding, in my neatest handwriting. I jotted ideas, flower suggestions, peonies were her childhood favorite, recipes for a rehearsal dinner we could host, even a list of family members to invite from our side. I imagined Mark dancing with her at the reception, the father-daughter dance we'd practiced in our living room when she was little, twirling to old songs on the radio. I pictured myself giving a toast, voice cracking as I told the room how much I loved my daughter. When she came home for a quick weekend in April, the three of us sat at the kitchen table poring over bridal magazines I'd bought on impulse. She laughed at some of the over-the-top gowns, pointing out ones she liked, simple, elegant, nothing too fussy. I showed her a picture of a lace-sleeved dress and said it reminded me of the veil my own mother had worn. Emily smiled and squeezed my hand. Maybe, she said. I want something timeless. Liam came with her that visit. He was warm, congratulating us again on raising such an incredible woman. We grilled steaks in the backyard, and he talked about the honeymoon they were planning, maybe Greece or Italy. I asked about his parents. If they were excited. He said yes, that his mother was already looking at venues and vendors. Vanessa knows all the best people, he added casually. Emily nodded enthusiastically. That was the first subtle tug I felt, small, easy to ignore. Vanessa knows the best people. I told myself it was natural, they moved in different circles, had more resources. Of course they'd want something beautiful. A week later Emily mentioned they were leaning toward a venue in the city, a historic mansion with gardens and a ballroom. It's gorgeous, Mom. You'll love it. The price tag, when she let it slip, made my stomach drop quietly, but I pushed the worry aside. This was her day. We'd figure it out. I offered to help however I could. I could make favors, I said during one call. Or centerpieces. I'm good with flowers. There was a tiny pause before she answered. That's sweet, Mom. We're still figuring out the vibe. Vibe. Another word that felt borrowed from her new world. Then came the guest list conversation. She called one evening to say they were keeping it intimate, around 100 people. Quality over quantity, she explained. I understood, weddings were expensive. But when I asked about inviting Aunt Linda and Uncle Ray, or some of her cousins, she hesitated. We're trying to keep the families balanced, she said carefully. Liam's side has a lot of obligations. Obligations. The word sat strangely in my ears. Mark and I talked about it later that night. Maybe we can have a separate party here, he suggested. For our side of the family, after the wedding. I nodded, but the idea made me sad. I wanted to be there, not throwing an after-party for the people who couldn't come. Still, I clung to hope. I sent Emily links to mother-daughter dance songs, asked if she needed help registering, offered to go dress shopping whenever she wanted. Sometimes she responded enthusiastically, other times the replies came slower, vaguer. We're meeting with a planner next week, she'd say. She's amazing, Vanessa recommended her. The planner. That was another shift. Suddenly decisions were being filtered through a professional Emily referred to as the best in the city. When I asked if I could join a planning call or see the mood board, Emily laughed lightly. It's mostly logistics right now, Mom. Boring stuff. I started to notice how often Liam's family came up. His parents were hosting an engagement party at their country club. His mother had connections for the florist, the photographer, the band. Emily sounded grateful, excited. I was happy she had help, truly. But each mention felt like a gentle push farther to the edges of the picture. One Sunday she called specifically to talk about the ceremony. We're thinking of writing our own vows, she said. And maybe keeping the bridal party small, just a few close friends. I waited for the part where she'd ask me to be involved somehow, readings, perhaps, or helping with something personal. Instead, she moved on to cake tastings they had scheduled with Liam's parents. I swallowed the lump in my throat and asked the question I'd been holding. Honey, will Dad and I be in any of the photos? Family portraits, I mean. There was a beat of silence. Of course, she said quickly. We're still working out the shot list. I told myself not to read into it. Weddings were stressful. Details changed. She was caught between two families, trying to please everyone. I didn't want to add pressure. So I kept my offering small and cheerful, a family recipe for signature cocktails, ideas for welcome bags if they did out-of-town guests. Each time, the response was polite, grateful, but non-committal. Deep down, a quiet worry began to take root. The wedding I'd started dreaming of, the one with our traditions woven in, with Mark walking her down a flower-strewn aisle while I sat teary-eyed in the front row, was slowly being replaced by something grander, more polished, But I pushed the worry aside. She was engaged, she was happy, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were moving towards something together, even if from opposite sides of a widening gap. I had no idea how wide that gap would soon become. It happened on a Tuesday evening in early October, exactly 8 months after the engagement and 6 weeks before the wedding date printed on the invitation still pinned to our refrigerator. I was folding laundry in the living room when my phone lit up with Emily's name. The sound of it made my heart lift out of habit, the same way it had since she was 15 and calling to say she'd be late from practice. I answered quickly. Hi, sweetheart. There was a long breath on the other end, the kind people take when they've rehearsed something difficult. Mom, she began, voice low and careful, I need to talk to you and Dad together. Can you put me on speaker? Mark was in the kitchen making coffee. I called him in, wiped my hands on my jeans, and pressed the button. We sat side by side on the couch like we were waiting for bad medical news. Hey, Mark said, trying for warmth. Everything okay? Another pause. I'm going to tell you something, she said, and I need you to listen all the way through before you respond. Please. We both murmured agreement. She spoke slowly, deliberately, as if reading from notes she didn't want to look at. Liam and I have made a final decision about the wedding. We've decided to make it an extremely small, private event. Immediate family only on both sides. And, after a lot of discussion, we've realized that the healthiest thing for everyone is if you and Dad aren't there. The words entered the room like cold water poured straight into my lungs. I felt them, but I couldn't process them yet. Mark leaned forward, elbows on knees. Emily. Please, Dad. Let me finish. She continued in the same measured tone she might use to explain a work policy. This isn't about not loving you. It's about the day being calm and joyful for us. Liam's family has certain expectations, and over the past year I've come to understand how wide the gap is between our worlds. Every time we've tried to blend them, it's caused tension. For me, for Liam, for everyone. I carry that tension, and I don't want to carry it down the aisle. I know how you both are. You'll worry about fitting in. You'll feel out of place among people who summer in places you've never been, who talk about things you don't know about. You'll try so hard to be proud and supportive, and I'll see it on your faces, that you're uncomfortable, that you feel less than. And that will hurt me more than anything. I don't want to spend my wedding day translating between worlds or worrying that someone is judging you or that you're judging them. I don't want to flinch when Dad's boots make a sound on marble floors, or wonder if Mom's dress is the right shade of whatever the planner decided mothers should wear. I don't want to feel guilty for having more than we ever had growing up. I'm tired of feeling guilty for being happy in a life that looks different from the one I was born into. This is the kindest way I know to protect all of us. I need the day to be only love and celebration, without the weight of everything unsaid between us. I'm asking you, please, to respect that." Silence stretched across the line like a held breath. I stared at the carpet, at a small stain from when Emily was 7 and spilled grape juice. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. There was no anger in me, only a vast, sudden emptiness. Mark spoke first, voice rough but gentle. "So we don't get to see you get married?" "No," she said quietly. "You don't." Another beat. "Will there be photos?" he asked. "We'll send professional ones after." I found my voice then, small and steady, the way you speak when you're afraid any louder and you'll shatter. "Emily, do you understand what you're asking? To miss your wedding day? To not watch you walk down the aisle, to not see you in your dress, to not hold your hand one last time before you become his wife?" "I do understand," she answered, and her voice wavered for the first time. "I understand exactly. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But this is what I need." I closed my eyes. Images flashed behind my lids, her tiny hand in mine at kindergarten drop-off, her tear-streaked face the first time a boy broke her heart, the way she used to run to the door when we came home from work. All of it leading to this moment where she was choosing, calmly and finally, to step into a future that no longer included us in it. I wanted to beg. I wanted to say we'd be quiet, we'd blend in, we'd wear whatever they told us, sit wherever they wanted, smile and clap and disappear the second it was over. But the words stayed trapped behind my teeth because I knew, somewhere deep and terrible, that it wouldn't matter. The decision wasn't about logistics anymore. It was about who she had become, and who we no longer were to her. So I said the only thing I could say without breaking. "Okay, Emily." Just that. 2 words, spoken softly. Mark reached for my hand. His was shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. "I know this is hard. I know. I'll call in a few days when things calm down. I love you both." The line went dead. We sat there for a long time, the phone dark between us. No one cried at first. The pain was too big for tears, it simply occupied all the space in the room until there was no air left. Eventually Mark stood up, walked to the fridge, and took the invitation down. He held it for a moment, then placed it face down on the counter like a body being covered. I stayed on the couch, hands folded in my lap, staring at nothing. She had done it without raising her voice, without cruelty, without giving us anything to push against. A clean, surgical cut delivered with love and apologies and unbreakable resolve. And because there was no villain, no screaming fight to replay, no moment where we could say, "That's when it went wrong," the wound had nowhere to bleed except inward. That night I lay in bed long after Mark finally fell into uneasy sleep. I didn't toss or turn. I simply existed inside the truth she had handed us, that our daughter had weighed our presence in her life against her peace on her wedding day, and we had come up short. I thought of every sacrifice we never told her about, every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every time we said yes when we wanted to say no, because it was for her. I thought of the mother I had tried to be, flawed, yes, but present, always present. None of it had been enough to earn a seat at her table. Around 3 a.m., I walked quietly to her old room. The moonlight fell across the bed she hadn't slept in for years. I sat on the edge and pressed my face into the pillow that still carried the faintest trace of her teenage perfume. Only then did I let myself cry, silently, so Mark wouldn't hear, shoulders shaking with sobs that had no sound. I cried for the little girl who once believed I could fix anything with a hug and a band-aid. I cried for the mother who had just been told, in the gentlest possible way, that she no longer belonged in her daughter's happiest memory. And most of all, I cried because even in the deepest part of the pain, I couldn't hate Emily for it. She had asked for what she needed. And I, who had spent 28 years teaching her to know her own worth, could not bring myself to deny her that now. So I dried my face, went back to bed, and lay beside my sleeping husband. The wedding would go on without us. And somehow, in the quiet dark, we would have to find a way to live with that. The day arrived on a Saturday in late November, crisp and bright, the kind of autumn morning that photographers dream about. Clear blue sky, leaves in their final blaze of color, air sharp enough to feel alive. Their wedding day. Our daughter's wedding day. Mark and I woke early, the way we always did on important days. For a moment, lying in the half-dark, I let myself pretend it was like any other Saturday. Then memory returned, heavy and certain, and I understood there would be no rushing around, no nervous excitement, no last-minute drive to the city with a garment bag across the back seat. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I made coffee for two, the way I had every morning for 30 years, but the simple act felt ceremonial today, like marking time. Mark came downstairs in his old flannel shirt, hair still tousled from sleep. We didn't speak much. There was nothing new to say. We had said it all in the week since Emily's call, quiet conversations after dinner, holding each other in the dark, agreeing that we would get through this the only way we knew how, together, and without bitterness. We ate toast at the kitchen table. The invitation, no, the reply card we had never sent, lay in a drawer now. I had taken it down from the fridge the night she told us. In its place was a small calendar with today's date circled in red, a private reminder we no longer needed. Outside, the neighborhood stirred. Cars passed on their way to errands, children shouted somewhere down the block. Normal life continuing, indifferent to the fact that somewhere, 2 hours away, our only child was putting on a white dress we would never see. I washed the dishes slowly, watching droplets slide down the window over the sink. I pictured Emily at this moment, maybe laughing with her bridesmaids, maybe standing still while someone laced up the back of her gown. I wondered if Vanessa was there, adjusting the veil, telling her how beautiful she looked. I wondered if Emily felt nervous, the way I had on my own wedding day, stomach fluttering with a mix of joy and fear. Mark went out to the garage. I heard the faint clink of tools, the soft opening and closing of drawers. He wasn't fixing anything, he was just keeping his hands busy. I understood. Stillness felt dangerous today. I wandered through the house the way you walk through a museum of your own life. In the hallway, I stopped at the gallery wall of photographs. There was Emily at 3, grinning gap-toothed in a pumpkin patch. Emily at 8, arms spread wide on her first bike. Emily at 16, holding her acceptance letter, eyes bright with possibility. Emily at 22, graduation gown open over a sundress, arms thrown around both of us. I touched the edge of that last frame, tracing the curve of her smile. Upstairs, her old room waited exactly as she had left it years ago, lavender walls faded now, posters carefully preserved under glass, the stuffed rabbit still propped against the pillows. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the memories come, not fighting them. I remembered the morning of my own wedding. How my mother had buttoned 30 tiny pearls down my back, her fingers trembling slightly. How she had whispered, "You'll always be my little girl," and I had laughed because I felt so grown. I wondered if anyone was saying that to Emily today. I wondered if she would have wanted to hear it from me. Time moved strangely. The clock said 10, then 11, then noon. Somewhere, guests were arriving. Somewhere, music was starting. Somewhere, Mark should have been walking her down the aisle. I went back downstairs. Mark had come in from the garage and was sitting in his chair, staring at nothing. I sat on the couch across from him. We looked at each other for a long moment. She's probably walking down the aisle right about now, he said quietly. I nodded. My throat was too tight for words. We didn't turn on the television. We didn't play music. The silence felt appropriate, respectful almost. This was the space we had been given, and we would occupy it with dignity. I closed my eyes and prayed, not the formal kind, but the wordless kind that rises from the deepest part of a parent's heart. Let her be happy. Let her feel loved. Let the day be everything she dreamed. Protect her, always. And if she thinks of us at all today, let it be with gentleness. I pictured her in the gown she had chosen without me. I pictured Liam waiting at the end of the aisle, tall and steady. I pictured her smile when their eyes met. I hoped someone was capturing that moment forever. Around 2 o'clock, Mark made sandwiches we didn't really eat. We sat at the table and picked at them, talking about small, safe things, the neighbor's new dog, the leak in the garage roof we needed to fix before winter. Ordinary conversation to hold back the tide. The afternoon stretched. Sunlight moved across the living room floor in slow increments. I thought about the reception, dancing, toasts, cake. I wondered what song they had chosen for their first dance. I wondered if Emily was relaxed now, surrounded by people who fit seamlessly into her new life. At some point I took out my phone, thumb hovering over her name. I typed nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't intrude. I set it face down on the table. As evening approached, the light turned golden. The house grew dimmer. I lit a single lamp, not wanting full brightness. Mark stood at the window for a long time, hands in his pockets, watching the streetlights come on. She's married now, he said eventually, voice rough. Yes, I answered. She is. We didn't say, our daughter is married. The possessive felt distant, like something from another life. Night settled. We ate soup for dinner because it required no effort. We sat on the couch together, my head on his shoulder, his arm around me. Neither of us suggested watching a movie or reading. We simply existed in the quiet, two people holding vigil for a day we were not part of. Before bed, I went back to the hallway photographs one last time. In the low light, Emily's younger faces seemed to glow. I touched the glass over her graduation photo again. I hope you're happy, my love, I whispered to the empty house. I hope it was perfect. Upstairs, I changed into my nightgown slowly. Mark was already in bed, staring at the ceiling. I slipped in beside him and he reached for my hand without a word. We lay there in the dark, fingers intertwined, breathing in unison. No tears came tonight. The grief was there, deep, aching, immovable, but it had settled into something steady, almost sacred. We had cried enough in the weeks leading up to this. Today was about endurance. Somewhere across the distance, our daughter was beginning a new life. And here, in the quiet house that had once echoed with her laughter, we let her go. Not with anger. Not with resentment. Only with the same love we had given her from the very first day, unconditional, unwavering, and now, necessarily silent. Sleep came eventually, thin and fitful. Tomorrow would be another day. But tonight belonged to absence, to memory, and to the quiet certainty that some loves are large enough to release what they cannot keep. The day arrived on a Saturday in late November, crisp and bright, the kind of autumn morning that photographers dream about. Clear blue sky, leaves in their final blaze of color, air sharp enough to feel alive. Their wedding day. Our daughter's wedding day. Mark and I woke early, the way we always did on important days. For a moment, lying in the half-dark, I let myself pretend it was like any other Saturday. Then memory returned, heavy and certain, and I understood there would be no rushing around, no nervous excitement, no last-minute drive to the city with a garment bag across the back seat. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I made coffee for two, the way I had every morning for 30 years, but the simple act felt ceremonial today, like marking time. Mark came downstairs in his old flannel shirt, hair still tousled from sleep. We didn't speak much. There was nothing new to say. We had said it all in the week since Emily's call, quiet conversations after dinner, holding each other in the dark, agreeing that we would get through this the only way we knew how, together, and without bitterness. We ate toast at the kitchen table. The invitation, no, the reply card we had never sent, lay in a drawer now. I had taken it down from the fridge the night she told us. In its place was a small calendar with today's date circled in red, a private reminder we no longer needed. Outside, the neighborhood stirred. Cars passed on their way to errands, children shouted somewhere down the block. Normal life continuing, indifferent to the fact that somewhere, 2 hours away, our only child was putting on a white dress we would never see. I washed the dishes slowly, watching droplets slide down the window over the sink. I pictured Emily at this moment, maybe laughing with her bridesmaids, maybe standing still while someone laced up the back of her gown. She started crying. Not quiet tears, sobs that everyone could hear even over the music. She dropped the bouquet. Roses scattered everywhere. Then she said, loud enough for the first few rows to hear, I can't do this. The quartet stopped playing. You could hear gasps. Phones came out, people recording, even though there were signs asking them not to. Liam walked toward her, asking what was wrong, but she backed away. That's when she said it. She said, they're not here. My parents aren't here, and I banned them because I was ashamed. I was ashamed of them, and now I'm ashamed of myself. Mrs. Thompson, the whole room went dead silent. You could see it on people's faces, confusion, then realization spreading as they figured out who she meant. Vanessa tried to hush her, saying this wasn't the time, but Emily just kept going. She said she'd spent years trying to fit into a world that looked down on where she came from. That she'd convinced herself it was kinder to keep you away than to risk anyone making you feel small. But standing there, about to promise forever to someone, she realized she'd already broken the most important promise, to love and honor the people who loved her first. She told everyone she'd been cruel. That she'd chosen image over family. That the perfect day she'd planned felt hollow without the two people who taught her what love actually was. Liam looked stunned. His parents looked mortified. Some guests were whispering, others just staring. A few started crying, quiet, sympathetic tears. Emily turned to the officiant and said, I'm sorry, I can't marry him today. Not like this. Then she looked at Liam and said, I need to fix what I broke first. I'm so sorry. She ran out, still in her dress, veil trailing. Sarah said she heard later that Emily got in the car that was supposed to take them to the reception and asked the driver to take her straight home to the city. Alone. The ceremony just ended. No vows. No rings. The planner was frantically trying to move everyone to cocktail hour, saying there'd been a family emergency, but most people left. Some hugged Liam, others slipped out quietly. Vanessa was furious, apparently yelling at the planner about deposits and reputation. Liam just stood there at the altar for a long time, alone. Eventually they canceled the reception. Food wasted, bands sent home, flowers left wilting. People were posting about it online already, careful posts, nothing too harsh, but calling it heartbreaking and raw. Someone leaked that the bride had left because she missed her parents. Hashtags started trending in small circles, hashtag wedding regret, things like that. Emily hasn't answered anyone's calls. Not Sarah's, not her bridesmaids. Liam's family released some statement through the planner about respecting their privacy during a difficult time. I thought you should know. Emily was sobbing when she said your names. She kept saying Mom and Dad like she used to when we were kids. I think she needs you. Even if she doesn't know how to ask. Sarah's voice cracked on the last words. I thanked her, quietly, and hung up. Mark and I sat in the lamplight, the phone between us like evidence. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The perfect day, the one built so carefully, brick by expensive brick, with every detail chosen to exclude anything that didn't match, had crumbled before the vows were even spoken. Not because of rain or a wardrobe malfunction or a drunk uncle. But because, in the final moments, our daughter had looked at the life she was stepping into and seen what it had cost her. She had seen us missing. And in front of everyone she tried so hard to impress, she had chosen truth over perfection. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt only a deep, trembling ache, for the young woman in a wedding dress fleeing her own ceremony, for the confusion and hurt she must be carrying alone, for the years that had led us all to this moment. Mark reached for my hand. His eyes were wet. She said our names, he whispered. Yes, I answered, voice barely steady. She did. We didn't call her that night. We didn't know if she was ready, or what we would even say. But for the first time in months, the silence between us and Emily felt less like an ending and more like a pause. A painful, necessary pause before whatever came next. The perfect day had collapsed. And in its ruins, perhaps, there was room for something real. The call came the next morning, Sunday, just after 9. The phone rang while I was pouring coffee, and Emily's name on the screen made my hand tremble so badly that brown liquid slopped onto the counter. Mark was already beside me. He had heard it too. I answered on speaker, the way we had learned to do with hard conversations. Mom? Her voice was small, hoarse from crying. Dad? We're here, honey, I said, as calmly as I could. There was a long silence filled only with her uneven breathing. I'm so sorry, she finally whispered. I ruined everything. The wedding, Liam, all of it. I hurt him. I embarrassed his family. And I hurt you worst of all. Mark and I exchanged a glance. He shook his head almost imperceptibly. No lectures, no recriminations. You didn't ruin anything that can't be mended, I said gently. Tell us what you need right now. Another pause, longer this time. I ended the engagement last night. It's over. I couldn't marry him knowing what I'd done to get there. Knowing I'd built the whole day on excluding you. When I said it out loud in front of everyone, that I was ashamed of you, it hit me how far I'd fallen. I didn't recognize myself anymore. Her words came in fragments between quiet sobs. I kept thinking if I could just make everything perfect, the guilt would go away. That if the flowers were expensive enough, the venue grand enough, the guest list curated enough, I could outrun where I came from. But standing there in that dress, with all those people waiting, I realized I wasn't running from you. I was running from me. From the girl who grew up in our little house with homemade cakes and secondhand love. And I hated myself for it. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of every year we had poured into her. Emily, Mark said, voice steady and low, we never wanted you to feel you had to run from us. We only ever wanted you to be happy. I know, she said, breaking again. That's what makes it worse. You gave me everything, and I treated you like something to hide. I was so afraid of looking unsophisticated, of not belonging, that I pushed away the only people who ever truly belonged to me. She told us she had spent the night alone in her apartment, still in the sweatpants she'd changed into after fleeing the venue. That Liam had called several times, confused and hurt, asking for explanations she wasn't ready to give. That Vanessa had left voicemails about damage control and reputation management. That friends had texted sympathy or shock, but no one knew what to say. "I keep replaying it," she said. "The way everyone looked at me when I said your names. Some of them pitied me. Some judged. But mostly they just saw the truth, that I'd chosen appearances over love. And I couldn't go through with it." We listened without interrupting. No reminders of the pain she had caused us. No quiet satisfaction that the day had fallen apart. Only the steady presence we had always tried to offer. When her words slowed, I spoke softly. "Sweetheart, what matters now is that you saw it. You stopped before it was too late. That took courage. Real courage." "I don't feel courageous," she said. "I feel like a failure." "You're not a failure," Mark answered. "You're our daughter, and you're hurting. That's enough for today." She cried then, openly, the way she hadn't since childhood. We stayed on the line, saying little, just breathing with her across the distance until the storm passed. Eventually she asked, voice barely above a whisper, "Can I come home? Just for a little while?" I looked at Mark. His eyes were bright, but he nodded. "This is always your home," I said. "Whenever you're ready." "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve it, but thank you." After we hung up, Mark and I stood in the kitchen for a long time, arms around each other. There was no celebration, no sense of justice served. Only a deep, quiet relief that our daughter had found her way back to herself, and perhaps, in time, back to us. We didn't speak of forgiveness, it was already given. We didn't speak of the lost wedding or the broken engagement. Those belonged to her now, part of the hard path she would have to walk. We only held each other and waited, with the same patient love we had always had, for the sound of her key in the door. Some lessons, we understood, cannot be taught. They can only be lived. And when she was ready, we would be here, not to say, "We told you so," but simply to say, "Welcome home." Emily came home 3 days later, on a gray Wednesday afternoon in early December. She pulled into the driveway just as the first flurries of the season began to fall, soft, hesitant flakes that melted the moment they touched the ground. Mark and I were waiting on the porch, not hovering, just there. When she stepped out of the car, she looked smaller than I remembered, hair pulled back simply, face bare of makeup, wearing the old college sweatshirt she used to live in. She carried a small duffel bag and nothing else. She stopped at the bottom of the steps, eyes red-rimmed, and looked up at us. "Hi," she said, voice barely carrying over the quiet. "Hi, sweetheart," I answered. That was all it took. She climbed the steps slowly, and when she reached us, she dropped the bag and folded herself into our arms. The three of us stood there for a long time, holding each other while the snow fell around us. No one spoke. There was no need for grand apologies in that moment. The embrace said everything that words still felt too clumsy to carry. We brought her inside, out of the cold. I made tea the way she always liked it, strong, with a little milk, and we sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we had shared 1,000 ordinary moments. She wrapped her hands around the mug as if warming something deeper than her fingers. For the first few days, we moved carefully around each other. She slept in her old room, spent long hours reading or walking the neighborhood alone. We gave her space, but we were present, dinner ready at 6, the porch light left on if she came in late, quiet company when she wanted it. One evening, after the dishes were done, she asked if we could talk. We went into the living room and sat by the fire Mark had built. The Christmas tree stood in the corner, half decorated, We had waited for her. "I've been thinking about what to say," she began, staring into the flames. "I rehearsed it 100 times on the drive here. But everything sounds too small for what I did." Mark reached over and rested a hand on her knee. "You don't have to find perfect words, Em." She nodded, eyes filling. "I was wrong," she said simply. "Not just about the wedding, but about the years leading up to it. I let myself believe that love had conditions, that to belong somewhere new, I had to leave parts of myself behind. Including you. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but really I was protecting my own pride. And in the end, I lost the very thing I was trying to prove I deserved." I listened, heart aching in the familiar way it always did when one of my children hurt, even though she was our only one, and no longer a child. "I know sorry doesn't fix it," she continued. "I know I can't undo the day you spent alone while everyone else celebrated. I can't take back the silence, or the way I made you feel small. But I need you to know I see it now. All of it. And I'm ashamed, but I'm also grateful that you never stopped being the parents I didn't deserve in those moments." Tears slipped down her cheeks, and mine followed. Mark spoke quietly. "We weren't perfect parents, Emily. We made plenty of mistakes. But we never stopped loving you, not for a second. And love like that doesn't keep score." She looked at him then, really looked, and something softened in her face. "I don't want to be the person I became," she whispered. "I want to be the person you raised." I reached for her hand. "You never stopped being her." She was just lost for a while. We talked late into the night, not about blame, but about understanding. About how easy it is to mistake distance for growth, polish for worth. About how family isn't something you outgrow, it's the root that steadies you when everything else shifts. There was no dramatic moment of absolution. Forgiveness, we discovered, isn't a single declaration. It's a quiet choice, renewed each morning when you make coffee for 3 instead of 2, when you leave the porch light on, when you listen without defensiveness and speak without accusation. In the weeks that followed, Emily stayed. She helped Mark in the garage, handing him tools the way she did when she was little. She baked with me, messy, imperfect cookies that tasted like childhood. We finished decorating the tree together, hanging the same ornaments we'd collected over 28 Christmases. She laughed when she found the one she'd made in 2nd grade, a crooked star with too much glitter, and hung it front and center. She and Liam spoke once, by phone. It was brief, respectful, final. There were no villains in the end, only 2 people who had wanted different things than they realized. She grieved quietly, but she didn't look back with regret, only forward with clarity. One night, as snow blanketed the yard in earnest, the 3 of us sat wrapped in blankets on the porch, watching the quiet fall. "I used to think growing up meant leaving things behind," Emily said softly. "But maybe it just means learning what to carry with you." Mark squeezed her shoulder. I rested my head against hers. "Family, we've learned, is not the absence of pain or mistake. It's the presence of grace when those things come. It's the willingness to sit in the wreckage together until the light finds its way in again. There will be other weddings someday, hers, perhaps, when the time and the person are right. And when that day comes, we will be there. Not because we've earned it, but because love doesn't require earning. It only asks that we keep showing up. For now, this is enough, our daughter home, the house filled with her footsteps once more, the 3 of us healing in the gentle way that only time and tenderness allow. Some stories don't end with triumph or tragedy. They end with return. And sometimes, return is the most beautiful ending of all. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon, so you don't miss the next story. If this story meant something to you, Please like the video and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know who's listening in silence. These stories are told from the heart, inspired by real emotions, real struggles, and real life. Your support helps this channel grow and helps these stories reach the people they're meant for. Thank you for listening all the way till the end. I'll see you in the next story.